Johnny Carson, the king of late night, that charming smile, that easy laugh, he made America feel like they were just hanging out with an old friend. But when the camera switched off, that smile often vanished. Behind the scenes, Carson kept a mental blacklist. 9 Golden Age legends he thought were more than just difficult. He believed they were truly toxic. And today, we're revealing the names and the shocking stories.
Well, first of all, I'm stage struck, and I think they all know that. Secondly, I try to get a film that has audience identification.
Number 1. Joan Crawford. The year was 1970. Joan Crawford walked into NBC's Tonight Show studios like she owned the place. From the outside, she was dazzling. Hollywood royalty. Perfect posture. That signature icy glamour. But behind the doors, the staff whispered one word: demanding. Crawford had mailed over a 4-page list of requirements: the chair height, the camera angle, the exact temperature in the studio. 67 degrees sharp. Not 66, not 68. Even Carson's desk had to be adjusted. And when she finally arrived, she brought her own team of makeup artists. The Tonight Show already had Emmy-winning stylists. Didn't matter. Joan wanted her people, her rules. Then came the breaking point. A young production assistant, just 20, nervous, eager to please, walked into Crawford's dressing room holding a glass of water. The very water Joan had requested. But instead of a thank you, Crawford snapped. Witnesses say she unleashed a verbal assault, so cutting, the hallway outside went silent. She allegedly called the young woman a brainless little tramp and sneered that she'd be better suited to a brothel. The assistant fled in tears. Crawford demanded she be fired on the spot. Carson's producer refused, and from that moment the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. When the cameras rolled, though, magic. Crawford smiled, laughed, delivered perfectly rehearsed answers. Like flipping a switch, she transformed into America's sweetheart. Carson played along, but later he told friends she was like a beautiful statue, all shine, no soul. And when Christina Crawford's book Mommy Dearest came out years later, Johnny didn't doubt it for a second. I believe every word, he said, because he'd already seen behind Joan's carefully constructed mask.
Threat. I can answer that by telling you that in those lovely moments, I play Daphnis and Chloe.
Number 2, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra and Johnny Carson. On stage, they looked like pals. 2 legends swapping stories, cracking jokes, making TV history. But off camera, Carson bristled at Sinatra's presence. Why? Because when Sinatra showed up, he didn't come alone. He brought an entourage, 6 men in sharp suits who looked less like Hollywood stylists and more like muscle from the Vegas Strip. These weren't bodyguards in the traditional sense. Crew members said it felt like surveillance. Men spread across the studio, arms folded, eyes scanning every move. And then there was Sinatra himself. During one taping, a floor manager did his job. The standard 3 minutes till showtime warning. Sinatra didn't take it well. He grabbed the man by the tie, yanked him close, and growled, "Nobody tells me when I go on. I'll go on when I'm ready." That floor manager was a Korean War veteran, not easily shaken, but afterward, he looked pale, rattled, like he'd just stared down a gangster. Carson saw the whole thing on a monitor in his office. He nearly pulled Sinatra's segment then and there. Only the promise of sky-high ratings kept him from canceling. And that wasn't the only problem. Sinatra was notorious for last-minute cancellations. One time, he was already in the building. Makeup done. Suit pressed. 2 hours before airtime, he simply said, "Not in the mood," and walked out. The last straw came during a commercial break. Sinatra made a cruel comment about a female staffer's looks. Carson snapped out of his professional shell. He told Sinatra, flat and cold, "We don't talk about my staff that way." On air, the smiles returned. But from then on, Carson gave the order. Book Sinatra no more than once a year. I don't care what the ratings are. That was rare. Johnny almost never interfered with bookings. For him to step in, it meant one thing. He truly despised how Sinatra treated people who couldn't fight back.
Now, the argument against what I'm saying is that the world is full. All the best young directors are soaked.
Number 3, Orson Welles. When Orson Welles took the stage, viewers leaned in. The booming voice, the stories, the towering presence, a genius, larger than life. But for Johnny Carson, hosting Orson Welles was like wrestling a hurricane. The trouble started before the cameras even rolled. Carson's writers spent hours crafting thoughtful questions. Welles would glance at the cards, scoff, and toss them aside. Pedestrian. Obvious, he sneered. That left Carson stranded, interviewing one of the greatest filmmakers alive, with zero preparation. And Welles didn't make it easy. He talked in endless winding monologues. One segment, scheduled for 7 minutes, ballooned into 25. 2 other guests were cut entirely. Carson had subtle signals he'd use when time was up. A hand gesture, a glance. Welles ignored every one of them, and sometimes he went further. In the middle of a segment, he'd stand up, directly address the camera crew, telling them how to frame their shots as if the Tonight Show were his personal film set. Carson fumed privately afterward. Genius doesn't excuse everything, he said. Being brilliant doesn't give you the right to hijack someone else's show. The clash wasn't about talent. Carson respected Welles's artistry. What he couldn't stand was the arrogance, the sense that rules, time limits, even common courtesy. None of it applied to Orson Welles. For Johnny, a perfectionist who valued smooth production above all else, that arrogance was unforgivable.
Spelled out in light bulbs, I mean, besides something called a temperament, which consists most...
Number 4, Bette Davis. Bette Davis. Sharp tongue, sharp eyes, and sharper elbows when it came to sharing the spotlight. On screen, she was mesmerizing. In the Tonight Show studio, she could be brutal. When Davis was booked alongside other guests, younger stars especially, staff braced for fireworks. If someone else got a laugh, Davis would lean forward, cut them off mid-sentence, and launch into her own story. Sometimes she'd physically turn her back on whoever was talking, as if they didn't exist. Crew members said you could almost see her seething when attention shifted away. It wasn't about conversation. It was about dominance. But the real trouble came backstage. Before tapings, Davis demanded whiskey in her dressing room. Not unusual for the era, but sometimes it left her unpredictable. Staff remembered her using racist and sexist slurs, even in casual chatter. One makeup artist recalled her sneering, "Get me someone whose hands don't shake like they've been on a 3-day drunk." Carson, who hated open conflict, usually kept quiet. But one night during rehearsal, Davis snapped at a cue card holder. Too slow, too clumsy. She berated him like a schoolboy. Carson stepped in, quietly, firmly. "Miss Davis," he said, "on this show, we speak to everyone with respect. Or we don't speak at all." For once, she was stunned, and she backed down. Afterward, Johnny told Ed McMahon, "She doesn't need a stage, she needs a courtroom. Nobody should have to be cross-examined by Bette Davis without a lawyer present." Carson admired her films, but after the early 80s, he made the call. Enough was enough. As he put it, life's too short to be flogged by Bette Davis.
Some too?
Oh, sure. Makes you strong and tall.
Number 5, Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney should have been a nostalgic guest. The top box office star of the 1940s, Judy Garland's old partner in musicals, a living link to Hollywood's golden age. Instead, he was chaos in a tux. By the 1970s, Rooney had developed a reputation among Tonight Show staff for behavior that today would have ended his career instantly. Female assistants dreaded being assigned to him. He'd grab their hands when they brought water, hold on just a little too long, lean in and whisper, "Are you married?" And if they tried to pull away, he'd tighten his grip, smiling like it was all a joke. And then there was the drinking. According to crew, Rooney appeared intoxicated during multiple appearances, slurred words, tangled anecdotes, losing his train of thought mid-sentence. One infamous night in 1977, Rooney launched into a story about Judy Garland. It started sweet, then veered into territory so inappropriate Carson had to cut him off on live TV and change the subject. During the commercial break, Johnny turned to his producer and asked, "Is he drunk? Or is this just who he is now?" The generational gap didn't help. Rooney came from an era when misbehavior toward women was often brushed off as boys being boys. But Carson had a different standard. Professionalism mattered. Respect mattered. After one episode where Rooney kept making remarks about a young actress seated next to him, Johnny took her aside after the show. He personally apologized, embarrassed that she'd been subjected to it. A director recalled, "I'd never seen Johnny so rattled by a guest." From then on, Rooney's appearances dwindled. When he did appear, Carson insisted on daytime pre-tapings just in case. What could have been charming nostalgia instead turned into a problem Johnny quietly managed until he decided it wasn't worth the trouble anymore.
I don't see. My last marriage was 1 day, and I didn't sing it real loud.
Number 6, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa Gabor was made for talk shows. The accent, the glamour, the endless string of husbands. She played the role of the outrageous socialite to perfection. Audiences loved it. Carson? Not so much. Behind the curtain, Gabor was one of the most demanding guests in Tonight Show history. Her dressing room checklist read like parody. Temperature at exactly 74 degrees. Fresh orchids only, never carnations. Perrier water with precisely 3 ice cubes. No female guests under 40 on the same episode. At first, staff thought it was a joke. Then they realized she was dead serious. If something was missing, Zsa Zsa would refuse to leave her dressing room. Once, when the makeup team didn't have her preferred foundation, she screamed until someone was sent racing to Beverly Hills to buy it. That night, Carson himself had to intervene. He called her directly. "Zsa Zsa, darling, you already look beautiful." "We've got a show to do. Save the cosmetics crisis for another day," she relented. But the delays she caused drove Carson insane. Other guests sat waiting. Crew worked overtime. Entire show schedules were thrown into chaos. After one especially exhausting taping, Carson muttered to his producer, "I'd rather interview a cat." At least the cat wouldn't need 3 assistants and special lighting, and yet she kept coming back. Because once the cameras were rolling, Zsa Zsa delivered TV gold. Johnny knew it, and he also knew he'd need a stiff drink after every one of her appearances.
Cow. The obnoxious mama.
Number 7, Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters didn't just appear on The Tonight Show, she erupted. Carson's producers booked her because she was unpredictable, which was both a blessing and a curse. The audience never knew what was coming. Neither did Johnny. Winters had a habit of hijacking interviews. Carson would tee up a lighthearted question. "How's the new movie coming along?" And instead of a 2-minute answer, Winters would launch into a 10-minute tirade about politics, Vietnam, or corruption in Hollywood. Sometimes she was brilliant. Other times, total chaos. But it wasn't just the talking, it was the temper. One infamous night in 1973, Shelley clashed with Oliver Reed on another talk show. He made a drunken comment. She responded by dumping an entire drink on his head. The footage made headlines, and Carson's team braced themselves whenever she was booked after that. Before her Tonight Show appearances, staff actually removed glasses and bottles from the set, just in case. Even Johnny wasn't safe. Once, when he tried to rein her in with a quick commercial break, Winters cut him off and snapped, "Don't interrupt me, Johnny. This is important." The audience laughed nervously. Carson didn't. He hated losing control of the flow. And yet, when Winters was good, She was mesmerizing. She'd weave stories about old Hollywood, drop names, and make shocking confessions with absolute fearlessness. It was television dynamite. Carson respected her talent, but after especially fiery appearances, he would sigh backstage and mutter, "Interviewing Shelley Winters is like steering a tornado. You never know if you'll end up with a rainbow or total destruction."
I like big muscles and red corpuscles. I like a beautiful...
Number 8, Jane Russell. Jane Russell was a Hollywood bombshell, the brunette counterpoint to Marilyn Monroe, known for glamour, wit, and that famous voice. But Johnny Carson quickly learned her off-camera beliefs didn't match her glamorous image. Russell was deeply conservative, which by itself wasn't the problem. The problem was how bluntly, even cruelly, she expressed those views on national television. One night during rehearsal, Russell reportedly refused to work with a gay makeup artist. "I don't want one of those people touching my face," she allegedly said. The room fell silent. Then came her treatment of guests. She visibly recoiled when Rock Hudson's name came up in conversation. Once, when seated next to a young black comedian, she shifted uncomfortably in her chair and refused to engage. Carson, who almost never revealed his own politics, believed in creating a welcoming stage for every guest. Russell shattered that illusion. The most infamous moment came during a 1973 episode. Russell launched into a rant against new civil rights legislation. Carson tried to change the subject. She doubled down. The tension in the studio was so thick, the audience stopped laughing. When the cameras cut to commercial, Carson leaned over and told his producer, "That's the last time she's on my couch." And he meant it. Russell was quietly blacklisted. She never returned to The Tonight Show after that night. Carson explained to a friend years later, "You can be glamorous, you can be opinionated, but if you use my stage to punch down on people, you're done."
I've never asked you this, but I'm asking you now simply, purely, hold it!
Number 9. Jerry Lewis. Of all the stars Johnny Carson quietly blacklisted, Jerry Lewis sat at the very top. On paper, Lewis was the ultimate guest, comic genius, box office gold, beloved philanthropist with his annual telethons, but behind the scenes, crew members had another nickname for him, the Monster. When Lewis came to The Tonight Show, the atmosphere changed instantly. He treated assistants like personal servants. He snapped at cameramen. He belittled stagehands, barking, "You! Move faster! This isn't amateur hour." And he wasn't joking. He meant every word. One sound engineer later said, "Most stars wanted to be liked by the crew. Jerry wanted to prove he was above us." Then came the night he crossed Carson directly. "Live on air," Lewis interrupted Johnny mid-question. He leaned over, reached across the desk, and started adjusting Carson's tie. Carson froze. The audience chuckled nervously, thinking it was a gag, but insiders knew Carson had one unbreakable rule: never touch him. After that show, Carson told his team, "He's done. I don't care how big the ratings are. He's never setting foot on this stage again," and he never did. Jerry Lewis became one of the few megastars truly exiled from Carson's Tonight Show. Years later, in private, Johnny summed it up with brutal honesty. "In a town full of phonies, Jerry Lewis still stands out. Not just difficult, not just egotistical, truly hateful." 9 stars. 9 legends of Hollywood's golden age, each one dazzling under the spotlight. And yet, behind the curtain, their masks slipped. Carson couldn't forgive cruelty, not arrogance, not eccentricity, but cruelty. He judged celebrities not by how they treated him, but how they treated the people with no power, the stagehands, the makeup artists, the young assistants running around with water glasses, and time proved him right. Joan Crawford's family memoirs, Sinatra's bullying, Jerry Lewis's notorious reputation. The truth came out, and Johnny Carson had seen it all decades earlier. For Carson, The Tonight Show wasn't just about jokes and ratings. It was a quiet test of character. Some passed, others failed spectacularly. And now you know the stories behind the smiles, the blacklist of late night's most powerful man. But here's the question. Which name on this list shocked you the most? And do you think Carson was too harsh or just ahead of his time? Tell me in the comments. I'll be watching. And if you want more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me for the next deep dive. Because trust me, we're just getting started.